Hey guys, okay, here we go with the model of human occupation. This is going to be a little longer than some of them because this one is pretty in depth, but take breaks, come back to it if you need to. You can stop and do it in chunks if that helps. Okay, so here we go. Um, this is going to meet the objectives of analyzing and applying the model of human occupation and the concepts to occupational therapy practice. This also is in alignment with your course objectives that are here to discuss, describe, differentiate by outcomes between the most frequently used models in occupational therapy, compare, contrast, and apply the various models that best guide the practice of OT for persons, groups, and populations, associate a common intervention with each theoretical model of practice, and demonstrate professionalism through team assignments. In the beginning, Gary Kielhofner, took on Mary Riley's occupational behavior as his foundation for the MOHO, and he was in school doing his thesis, and that is where he began his MOHO journey, and it was based on occupational behavior and general systems theory. So he actually was a student of Mary Riley and originally created the model in 1975, and within 5 years he and his colleagues published MOHO for the first time. Okay, then MOHO was first published in 1980 as a series of 4 articles. The first edition of the book was called A Model of Human Occupation, Theory and Application in 1985 was published. MOHO is a conceptual model of practice that evolved in the middle 70s. It subsequently designed and developed into practice model to provide theory along with practical tools and strategies for occupational therapy and related practice. This is not just a conceptual model, but this does the whole thing that we've talked about before, from practice, from conception to all the way through assessment and intervention. MOHO is defined as a set of evolving theoretical arguments that are translated into a specific technology for practice and are refined and tested through research. The focus for this model is its systemic, holistic approach for persons of varying needs and populations across the lifespan. It stresses the importance of the mind-body connection in its depiction of how motivation, which is internal, and performance of occupation, which is seen as external, are interconnected. The human occupation is described as the doing of work, play, or activities of daily living within a temporal, physical, and sociocultural context. It is interactive. Its interactive nature is between the person and his environment, and how the relationship contributes to one's source of motivation, patterns of behavior, and performance. So you're going to see this model is talking a whole lot more about the person than necessarily it talks about how the environment impacts the person. So this goes back to Mary Riley's occupational behavior, and we're looking at how the person is interacting more so than how the environment interacts with the person. So you'll kind of see that as we go through. And this looks at the person as an open system. So it's the input that comes from external goes into the person, and then the person is going to take in what what is coming in, and they're going to sort of do what their body will allow them to do with it so that they can make an output or the occupational performance. Then they will see what the environment does with it or gives them feedback. And we're going to go deeper into that in just a minute. So you'll see here, you have your input. So once some of the sensory activity or the input comes in to the person, then you have throughput, which in throughput you have a subsystem, and there's three parts to it. You have volition, you have habituation, and you have performance. And we're going to go through each one of those sections and talk about what each one of those are and how the body, according to MOHO, how the body handles and what handles each one of those things. And then once the body does what it does with those things, then it produces an output. That output could be adaptive, maladaptive, could be positive, negative. So we will look at that in just a moment. But that output that comes from all of those things that are churning up on the inside comes out, and then we get feedback from it. Okay, and from that feedback determines what the next input is. You might have to replay this one. Okay. All right. So the person, according to Kielhofner, this is how he's redefining it for practice. So his theoretical view of the person is very comprehensive. Okay, very comprehensive. So the variables include one's motivation, behaviors, and performance. Okay, so all three of those interrelate to form the person's identity. So as we're going through here, think about yourself. Think about yourself as a student. So, and I will try to teach this from that perspective. So, as a student, you have motivation, you have behavior, and you have performance. So he has specifically grouped these variables into three subsystems that he calls volition, habituation, and performance capacity. And you saw those three on that slide before that were in the middle, which are inside the person. Okay. So here they are again. So you see we have volition, habituation, and performance. Under each one of those, we have a subsystem. So under the volition, we have our values and our interests. So those are the things that motivate us. Our values and our interest will motivate us. Our habituation comes from our roles and our habits. What makes us do what we do? And then performance is the subjective experience. Okay, so how is our performance working? So when you look at school, what is your value and your interest? So how interested are you in being a student, and what is your value related to it? How valuable is it to you to be successful? And then what are your habits related to that being successful? And what is your role? So some of those things may be maybe you can't do what you want to do because you have too many roles, or maybe you don't know how to adjust your roles. So we're going to look, makes me think about slow your roll. Okay, so that's kind of funny. Anyway, we're going to think about this as we go along and try to put it into perspective here. Okay, so MOHO addresses how occupation is motivated, patterned, and performed. So humans in this model are conceptualized as being comprised of three interrelated components. So again, we're talking about volition, habituation, and performance capacity. Volition refers to the motivation, saying the same thing I said before, for occupation or your motivation as a student. Habituation refers to the process by which the occupation is organized into patterns or routines. How are you organizing yourself as a student to study and become successful? And then performance capacity refers to the physical and mental abilities that underlie skilled occupational performance. So what is your capacity to be successful? Are you rested enough? Do you have are you given enough challenge to be successful? Are you trying to learn too far above your capacity, too far below your capacity? Do you need to break things down so you understand them? So learning where you're at your level is really important. So the four concepts. So since MOHO emphasizes that to understand human occupation, we must understand the physical and social environments in which it takes place. The model looks at occupation and problems of occupation that occur in terms of its four primary concepts of volition, habituation, performance capacity, and now we're adding the environmental context, okay? Because environment plays a role. So volition, again, repeating this, source of motivation for occupation. It is considered a subsystem. Volition is your subsystem, a subsystem. Habituation is a subsystem, and that refers to the process by which occupation is organized into patterns or routines. Okay. Habituation, habits, patterns, routines. You've heard that before in your OTPF. Okay. Then we have our performance subsystem. So the performance capacity, and that refers to the physical and mental abilities that underlie skilled occupational performance. So this subsystem is also called the mind, brain, body performance. Okay, so it's the thinking, feeling, doing performance, this subsystem. So now here's these assumptions, and remember when you put these on the on your on the table, this is going to go under the theoretical part, or the go under the focus. I think it goes under the focus. Anyway, somewhere around there. Make sure you have these on that table there. So humans are biologically mandated to be active. Spontaneous action is the most fundamental characteristic of all living things. So spontaneous action, most fundamental. Okay. Practice application. Persons have a fundamental and neurologically based need for action and doing. This innate need is the dominant source of motivation. So we have a need for action and doing, and it is the dominant source of motivation for participation. So we need to learn. You need to learn. You need to be a student, and to do that you have to study, right? So that is the action and doing of being a student. Thinking, feeling, and doing are influenced by a dynamic interaction between one's internal components and the environment. So situations and conditions within the environment will influence a person's motivation. Okay, so this is no different than what the other models that we've talked about. So in systems theory, it helps the practitioner to understand that there are multiple factors within the person and the environment that influence each other. So a change, and I said this a minute ago, positive or negative, in any one variable will automatically result in a change in one's motivation, behavior, and or performance. Okay, so if something is going on externally or in the environment, such as maybe you had a flat tire on the way to school, couldn't get there. That causes a change in the way that you're going to learn. So that is an environmental external, right? That is the input that's coming in that we talked about a minute ago that you're having to deal with internally, and then it's going to affect your output. Okay. Then man is an open system that can change and develop through interaction with the environment. The parts of the open system cycle include input, throughput, output, and feedback. So, practice application. Persons are continuously impacted by input from one's environment and feedback from one's environment. So, clients learn about themselves by experimenting with behaviors and receiving feedback about this behavior. Some cycles are positive and some are negative. So, let's think about this. Let's talk back about that tire. Had a flat tire, you you finally got to school a little late, um, and so your tire was the input, you're dealing with it internally, you're frustrated, you're not able to concentrate, your output, maybe you didn't do so well on your quiz, maybe that you had that day, and so the feedback that you got was a worse grade than what you wanted, and so the input that you get that you learned from that is to check your tires early, maybe. Or maybe you learn to deal with it, it's just a quiz, right? So that feedback that you get from the environment tells you how you're going to deal with it next time. Okay. Is the principle that the demands of a context or situation will determine how human variables will organize themselves to achieve a sense of order. In a hierarchy, each component contributes something to the total outcome, but the arrangement or order of these variables is changeable due to the conditions of the context and our environment. So the client's environment or context and our situation greatly influence how the person variables identified as motivation, habituation, and performance capacity will interrelate with each other. Okay, so this might be a little more difficult to think about. So what this is saying is some days that environment is going to play more of a role than what your motivation is. So maybe that flat tire is the environment that's playing more of a role in how well you do in school than what your actual motivation is. You're very motivated, but you can't really do much about it if you have a flat tire, right? So that's the difference that you're seeing there. Okay. Patient and occupations helps to create our occupational identity, which is formed by the person's internal structures that's defined by the volition, habituation, and performance capacity. It is a subjective construct. The clients develop an identity over time. It is believed that this identity begins with self-appraisal and extends toward more challenging dynamics such as accepting responsibility for and knowing what one wants in life. So again, let's take the student perspective here. So you come in as a newbie OT student, and your professional identity or occupational identity or student identity, however you want to look at it, might not be quite stable. You may be wondering, the uncertainty we've talking about. You may not even know if you're really a student or should even be there in the beginning. But as you're still motivated, so your motivation is stronger than your identity, and your motivation pushes you to be a better student. By being a better student, you have learned and you get your feedback because you're doing well. You get better grades, and your better grades tell you, I'm a better student. And so it becomes this cycle where you're doing much better and your identity is being formed. And then eventually you become a professional. And so that's kind of the, the rotation there. Then occupational competence is the degree to which one sustains a pattern of occupational participation that represents one's occupational identity. So competence is the ability to put into action what a person internally regards as meaningful. So clients demonstrate competency when they can organize their life to meet the basic responsibilities to themselves and the role obligations of society in satisfying and meaningful ways. So you as a student are progressively getting better and better and better to the point where you're going to be a practitioner and you feel competent in doing so. And you've been given that feedback, you're doing better, you pass your tests, you go on to the next level, you pass the next test, and so you finally feel a self-efficacy or competency in what you're doing. See, this is making a whole lot of sense, right? Okay. Adaptation is the outcome of a positive occupational identity and achievement of occupational competence. Okay, so you feel positive about your identity and you have achieved competence. So it is dynamic and context dependent. So go back and think about the concept of heterarchy where things can change. Then you've got your occupational therapy can promote a change in clients. The parts within the person or the throughput, the volition, habituation, performance capacity, that include motivation, life patterns, and performance lead to behaviors in work, play, and self-care. So the internal parts of the person are responsible for one's occupational performance and adaptation. So these are things that we're saying, same thing again. Whatever's working on the inside is producing what's coming out. So your occupational therapy acts as a form of feedback. So occupational therapy, what you're doing for your patient is that feedback or part of that feedback within one's environment that can ultimately impact how one changes and alters their behavior. So I've said this before, if a person does not know how to fix themselves, they're going to go to OT. OT is going to give them that sense of, or they're going to help them figure out how to get better, if you will, or how to fix their problem. I'm going to collaborate with the patient. That is the feedback loop. That's what's giving the patient the feedback, and then the patient gets stronger with that feedback, and they practice it, and it gets better. So you as a, and let's go back to you as a student. As a student, if you are struggling and you are doing the best you can, but you still cannot quite get a concept, then you're going to come to me or your mentor or someone, your advisor, as a looking for help, and that feedback's going to come to you from them. We're going to give you some feedback and some help, and you're going to learn it, and then you're going to move on, and you're going to feel more competent in it. Everybody needs a little help sometime, right? Okay, so now let's look at order. So Kielhofner defined function as order, or a status of health and competent performance of daily living, work, and play. So a person displays function when he is able to choose, organize, and perform occupations that are personally meaningful. It's a process whereby a person continuously learns how to balance his own expectations with those of society. A person who demonstrates order in daily living, work, and play experiences a sense of competence and role fulfillment. So this order is the same thing as function on your table. So function, dysfunction, order, disorder, same thing here. When a person has order in the model of human occupation, that means they are not requiring the help from someone outside. They didn't need that mentor, that teacher telling them how to do something. They were able to figure it out on their own and move forward with their daily living, okay, or their being a student or whatever. You're just moving through the process, doing it all on your own. Your performance capacity, your adaptation, your identity, all of that's running smoothly. Function, according to Mr. Gary Kielhoffner, is disorder. Okay, so he uses the term disorder versus dysfunction. You know, they just want to throw us a little bit here. So it's the inability to perform the occupations, or there's an interruption in role performance. Another way to say it, an inability to meet role responsibilities. So the person with dysfunctional behavior is not experiencing quality of life, or he can't meet his personal and societal expectations. So he is going through that systems picture there where you had the input, throughput, output, feedback. There's a block somewhere in there. Either he can't take input, maybe, or while he's in the throughput, somewhere in there, there's a problem. He's not able to perform, or he needs more feedback. Something's going on there. There's a problem in one of those places. Okay, so what do we do about that? Well, exploration, competence, and achievement equals order. So that means that the person that is in order or that is functional is able to explore, they are competent, and they are able to achieve things that they want to achieve. And that means they are in order. Those that are in disorder or that are dysfunctional, they are helpless, incompetent, and inefficient. Those are terrible words. I don't like those words, but what that means is that's the ones that we need to help. If they cannot help themselves, then they are in disorder. Now, note that just because maybe the person isn't meeting their expectations, but they can figure out how. So they are still exploring and they're working toward competence and achievement. It doesn't mean that they're perfect to be in order. And that's something that you really need to realize as an OT. If that person can figure it out on their own, they don't need help. They don't need OT. We want to get that person to that point. So we are not just uh, we are not just giving a man a fish, right? We are teaching them how to fish. So we want to make sure that we are not doing too much for the person, but we're teaching them how to do it for themselves. So that's why we really are all teachers. Okay. So now let's look at these subsystems a little bit. When you're looking at that picture of the system itself, this is in the middle at the throughput. So we have the three parts there of a volitional subsystem. Volition being motivation. So it is a source of motivation, and it guides the individuals to anticipate, choose, experience, and interpret what they do, their thoughts and feelings about doing occupations that reflect a sense of mastery, enjoyment, and value, judgments composed, and this again is composed of three smaller parts. So we're just kind of going down that if you will, it's kind of like a concept map. You could do a concept map with this. So within that volitional system or the motivational system, you have personal causation. And all that means is it's one's sense of competence and effectiveness, self-efficacy, what the person feels they're capable of doing, a person's awareness of his abilities, which includes your feelings of self-efficacy. So I am an intelligent person who can succeed in OT. Okay. Um, the other is the values or the beliefs about what's right or wrong. Um, and that's and good. So what influences one's goals, maybe what you feel like your family feels about you, or your culture, and then what are you actually interested in? Okay, so let's think about this from your personal student perspective. Something got you here, right? You were interested at some point in doing OT. Something caused you to be interested in it. Then you felt that you were capable of doing it. Okay, so you got to this point because you're smart. You got here because you felt like you could do it. And you're here and you value yourself enough to study and feel the importance of helping other people, which is the value of it. And so that is why um, that is what helps motivate you to do what you're doing. So as a student, you have an interest, you have values, and you have the personal oomph to do it, or the self-efficacy to be here. So that is the volitional subsystem, or that is the, yes, that is the volitional system there. Okay. Then after volition, after your motivation, then you have the habits. Okay, so what's going to keep you there? You have been motivated to get there. Now we have a habituation system, which is made up of the behaviors and roles that help persons to organize their daily life. And it has two parts, habits and roles. This is again in your OTPF. So your habits are your automatic and repetitive behaviors that influence how persons perform routine activities, use your time, and behave on a daily basis. Then your internalized roles is your source of identity with inherent obligations and expectations, also referred to as scripts or ideas of what is expected of oneself in a particular situation. It enables individuals to fulfill the needs for self and society. Okay, so let's think about yourself here. You are a student and you have that internalized role as a student in your head of what that looks like. You know what a student looks like. You know what that is going to be meant for you as you become an OT. Um, so you understand the importance of going to school every day, and you know that it requires you to put other things aside for right now because you have 3 years of your life that's going to go to this before you become an OT. Then you have those habits that you have to do, which could be positive or negative. Some habits that you're already doing that may need to change in order for you to be a successful person. So that is the habits that are within that subsystem. And so, from a patient perspective, these things could become a problem. This is when you do your assessment with your patients. You're going to figure out, do they have a problem with their habits? Do they see their internalized roles as being a problem? Maybe they have some roles that are negative roles. Maybe let's think of someone that has a role, maybe a negative role or a negative occupation could be maybe maybe a drug dealer. Maybe that is affecting who they are and what they're doing, and maybe they're doing it simply because that's the only way they know how to make money. So things that we have to dig into to figure out where the breakdown is in their system. Okay, so then we have that third part, which was the performance capacity subsystem. And remember, we said that that was also called the mind, brain, body subsystem. Now, within it, you have the 4 parts. Now, this is where we get into the body and when we work on the body. So I want you to notice the things we've talked about before now were more about top-down things. So thinking about the person from a broader perspective. Now we're getting to the specific body systems, and this is where most people, if they don't use a model of practice when they begin with the patient, this is where most people come in. Okay, that's not what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to think about the person as a whole. Um, other disciplines, this is where they start. They start with what is exactly physically wrong with the person. But notice we're just now getting to that, okay? So, because there could be so much more before that. So just wanted to point that out. All right, so the mind, brain, body subsystem is composed of 4 constituents that represent one's capacity for occupational performance and one's underlying natural ability. So you have a musculoskeletal system with your bones, muscles, joints, which comprises one's biomechanical structure. Okay. Then you have your neurological system, central peripheral nervous system, cardiopulmonary, cardiac and pulmonary systems, and then symbolic or abstract images that guide and give meaning. That one's a little weird to me, and I'm not, anyway, we'll talk about that. So this is pretty, I mean, for the most part, musculoskeletal, neurological, cardiopulmonary, we as therapists, the older trained therapists, this is our jam. This is what we know how to do. We can get in here and we know exactly how to fix it, okay? The other stuff, we really have to think about. All right. So our occupational performance or our skilled actions, that's the output. So when you look at that concept map that we looked at the beginning, where you had the input, the throughput, then we go to the output. That's where we're at now. That's where these body systems, mind, body system parts, that's where these come in. So they're goal-directed actions that make up occupational performance. And there's 3 categories of these. You have motor skills, which is used to move oneself or objects. You have process skills, thinking and planning actions used to help one organize and adapt. And you have communication and interaction skills, which are observable operations used to verbalize needs and intentions that are part of social behaviors. All 3 of these are in your OTPF. That is how the skills are broken down in your OTPF. Does that sound familiar? If you want to stop the video, take a look at your OTPF. It's kind of interesting how they use these things. Okay. So the person plus occupational performance. All right. Your person constructs, which were, remember, your volitional, habituation, and mind, brain, body subsystems. Then we're adding the occupational performance contributes to the development of occupational identity, occupational competence, and occupational adaptation. So all of those things together, if it's all working and in order, you will develop a positive identity, you will feel competent, and you will do that consistently through occupational adaptation for however you need to, because maybe the environment's not working for you at the time, or maybe you're a little off in your brain at the time because maybe you were tired or whatever, but you are adapting and it's all good. Okay. Talk about environment now. So your environment is your physical and social places in which a person performs occupations. Okay, so you have your physical and social, and it is shaped by culture. It provides opportunities and resources. So you have your opportunities and resources come from the environment, which is a positive, as well as demands and constraints, which are negative. And this is a significant source of feedback, and it can maintain or extinguish your occupational performance. So what this is saying is that in that feedback loop, your environment is external, and such as the flat tire was a negative because it was a constraint that kept you from getting to class, right? And it did extinguish your occupational performance. However, we didn't talk about this. So maybe you were able to get your spare tire on quickly and get to school. So if you were, that would have been a resource that was positive that helped you maintain your occupational performance of student. Okay, so there we have it. We have fixed our problem. Fixing problems. How do we do that? How do we change? So this is what happens. As a person experiments with novel behaviors and repeats them over time, the behaviors will become more automatic and habitual. Okay, so we have over time, we have repeating, and we have automatic and habitual. We also have experimenting, right? So we're trying different things. So then a person creates a sense of occupational competence when they are capable of engaging in productive and meaningful actions. So they have to be productive and meaningful. So what this is saying is sufficient repetition and environmental feedback is required to assimilate new performance patterns. So what this is telling you is you're trying it, practice makes perfect. That's what it's telling you. So you have to go in, try it, and that is what is you're motivated to change. And the feedback that you're getting from the environment is allowing that change to be repetitive, and then you are occupationally competent. Ta-da! Okay. Motivation goes along with changing, which I just mentioned, and it's influenced by your interest, by your values, and your sense of personal causation. So all aspects of the volitional system, or subsystem, sorry. So the volitional subsystem becomes the significant focus area for motivation and change. So that is where your change is coming from. So if I were to say within MOHO, or the model of human occupation, where would you initiate or see the initiation of change? And you would say within the volitional subsystem. You might see that. Okay. Then move on to evaluation process. So they do have the evaluation process, or Kielhoffner has the evaluation process in here, similar, just like the PEOP did, and EHP to a certain degree. But he calls it data gathering process. And just another thing that this kind of clued into me was I also called that, when I was teaching my codas, it was data gathering as well, because they do not do evaluation, but they also will help you as an OT gather data. So I did teach them that they are not doing evaluations, but they may be responsible for gathering data. So that's one way to put it for what the CODA does. We use the data to find out about a client from the viewpoint of an outsider looking in. So we are gathering data about this client. We collect and use the data to help clients understand how their personal perceptions and subjective views lead to occupational performance, actions, and patterns. So remember a minute ago I said that we need to help them understand. They're not helping us understand. We're gathering this data to help them. We have to remember that. This evaluation process is to help them, not us. Yes, we use it to analyze what's going on, but we need to listen to them in order to help them. MOHO has multiple assessments. It's one of the most researched models there is. And the more I study this one, I'm changing my mind on how much I like it, because I think it does tell us a lot about how we work, and it is it is systems theory. So I really, you know me, I like my systems theory. Um, so I really like the I really kind of think in this form, like he does. So um, the assessment tools that they have are really cool, and I do have access to that if anybody ever needs it. So anyway, the MOHO assessment instruments, they're both structured and they're unstructured. You'll be learning more about that as you learn about assessment tools being standardized, non-standardized. They typically include observational measures, a self-report, because we want to know what the patient thinks about themselves. There's questionnaires and there's checklists. There's structured interviews. There's unstructured assessments, allow the therapist to be more informal and spontaneous in response to a client's needs. Then we have intervention guidelines. So what they say about the interventions is that it should be focused on changing one's occupational performance. We want that skilled action process. We want their performance to be changed for the positive. So giving adaptive solutions should be offered in substitution for maladaptive ones. So this is where, yes, we should give these solutions, but we want them to help us think about what those are, okay? And that's we're going to go a little deeper into that when we talk about the co-op system in our interventions, and I'll be talking more about that second half of the semester. But interventions may be aimed at modifying or altering one's environment to promote opportunities for change. So here's our approaches again: modifying and altering, and we're talking about the environment there. Nothing new from any of the others, really. So interventions that are aimed at skilled performance, are more efficient than those aimed at a client's underlying personal structure. So interventions that take place in one's natural environment are more likely to be assimilated by the client. Therapists should be ready to alter or modify the client's environment to increase performance. So what this is saying is it's better to do what they need to do where they need to do it instead of simulating it. Interventions that relate to one's volitional subsystem will provide the most meaning and impact for the client. So the occupations must be relevant to the client to be effective. So let's take you being a student and you needing help. Let's take anatomy, for example. Okay, so studying for anatomy and you need help. Okay, would it help you if I were to say, okay, so let's study let me think, would be a good one. Let's study grammar. I'm going to teach you how to do grammar when you tell me you need studying for anatomy. And you're going to go, why are you doing that? That's not going to help. I am not motivated. So point well taken, right? So you need to be studying anatomy and you need help with anatomy, not grammar. Okay, I know that's kind of far-fetched or kind of stupid, but it kind of makes sense. So you have to work with the patient where they're at and what they want to work on and what they're motivated to work on. So why a model of human occupation? Why do we think that this one is the best? Well, it is widely applicable and maybe particularly useful for unraveling complex problems. And I have to agree with that. I mean, because it has a large breakdown to it, you can find the problem within it easier, if that makes any sense. So when you look at the different subsystems, there's so many parts to the subsystem, you might be able to locate the problem that the patient is having more so within it because it's broken down so much. Like you might really be able to get to the exact habit that is the problem. And then the other thing is motivation is regarded as crucial in this model. It makes strong links between individuals, tasks, and environment, and there are standardized assessments that can be used. Okay. And MOHO is intended for use with any person experiencing problems in their occupational life, and is designed to be applicable across the lifespan. So, for example, it's been applied to, with such diverse groups as adults with chronic pain, children with attention deficits, and persons with traumatic brain injury, older persons with dementia, persons living with AIDS, and adolescents with mental illness. It's also been applied in situations dealing with children and adults who are homeless, with battle-fatigued soldiers, and with victims of war and social injustice. So MOHO is also used in a variety of contexts. So it's been applied in hospitals, outpatient clinics, residential facilities, nursing homes, rehab programs, work programs, prisons and correctional settings, and community-based organizations. Okay, so that's the end of this lecture. It was 51 minutes long, and it is a lot to take in. Take it in parts. You need to break it down. I know it's long. I do like it though. I think that it really is a good model. If you look back at that one slide on the system itself, the simple slide where it has input, throughput, output, feedback, and then within the throughput, it's got the volitional systems. If you can explain that, I think you will totally understand this model. I think that that is the best place to go with it. And if you have any questions, please give me a call, email, whatever we'll be going over in class. And I am so looking forward to you guys' presentation. I did look through the group that is presenting, and y'all are going to be in for a big treat on this one. So have a great weekend. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.